Kathleen McTeague, or Kaki, who is the director of the UU College of Social Justice and works in Cambridge. And so, Kaki, my first question to you is, why don't you tell us some about the college and some of your programs, and particularly programs that might be of interest to ministers or seminarians.
Yeah, and then I'm going to also leave lots of room for some back and forth and questions that you might have, because I'm assuming that at least those of you who are on, may have had some specific interest too in what we're doing, and so have more specific questions rather than the general overview. But one of the things that prompted Dawn and Allison and I to think that having some kind of an opportunity for a webinar would be a good idea is because we've just begun building out programs that are really specifically targeted for ministers and for seminarians, and so it seemed like a good chance to tell colleagues about those. So just to begin with, the college was founded 2 years ago, just slightly over 2 years ago, at Justice General Assembly, and I was hired right at that same time. So I'm now in my third year, and the college is in its third year of existence. And it was jointly founded by the UUA and the UU Service Committee as really the most ambitious collaboration the two institutions have pretty much ever taken on, based on the last 10 years or so of good collaboration on disaster relief. After many years of either kind of ignoring each other's work or sometimes really being in competition for limited funds and not looking for the synergies that could be developed between the two institutions. So I'm really glad to say that we're in a new era of cooperation and collaboration, and the college is a product of that. So the idea behind the College of Social Justice was that one really good way that we could inspire and sustain social justice engagement on the part of our congregants and potentially whole congregations was through a variety of experiential learning opportunities. Both the UUA and the UUSC at different times had what would probably be best known in shorthand as service learning journeys of one kind or another, going to partner organizations. But neither of them had them developed with any consistency, and neither of them had programs that went on over a long period of time. They were kind of episodic. So the original premise for the College of Social Justice was that we would offer those kinds of programs, but there was an explicit assumption that we would build out in new directions as well. So just very briefly, there are kind of four major pots that we're stirring in terms of different kinds of programs. One is short-term service learning programs, and I sometimes hesitate to use that term, partly because service learning can be done very poorly and in a very superficial way, and many of us have had experience with that, but partly also because not all of the journeys that we do have a service component to them. They're deep, intensive, face-to-face learning opportunities, and sometimes a service opportunity is embedded in them and sometimes not. But with all of them, the assumption is that the real service that happens in what we do as activists when we come home based on the deeper learning that we have. So in Haiti, for instance, people are working side by side with Haitian people in the countryside who are building homes, but that isn't the real service they're doing. The real service they're doing is learning from the experience, learning more deeply about American colonialism and neo-colonialism in Haiti so that they're better prepared to be advocates for a more just relationship. So that's one example. The current sort of roster of service learning journeys that the college does are to Haiti with a UUSC partner organization called the Papai Peasant Movement, to India with the Holding India program, and right now we're going specifically to two partner organizations, one called Vidayak Sansad that works with land rights specifically for Adivasi or tribal people, and the other is Sewa, the women's union, works with women across sectarian and caste lines who are sort of the poorest women, poorest of the poor in India. Very powerful justice organizations, both of them. We have a partnership with Border Links, which I'll tell you a little bit more about because we have a clergy group going there next month, taking people to the border areas of Arizona and Mexico. And of course, that's high on people's roster right now because of all the attention to the unaccompanied minors crossing the border right now. And of course, that's also focused on immigration justice. And then we also have a program with the food workers, the Food Workers Alliance that is looking at the whole food chain and how people can develop a more just relationship with food supply and with wages for the food workers in our American industry. That group goes to Chicago. So we've been focused on trying to build out domestic opportunities, both because we think it's a good way to reinforce the fact that for a real boundary crossing experience and an exposure to economic injustice, you don't have to go outside the United States. And also for the sake of both direct cost and ecological cost, to not have people traveling far away all the time. I've got a lot of sirens in the background, so if you start having trouble hearing me, let me know. I am in downtown Central Square, Cambridge, so sometimes that happens. So the service learning opportunities that we have are one major area. A second major area are programs for high school youth that I particularly want my colleagues to be aware of, because we're trying to pretty aggressively build out those programs. There seems to be a real desire on the part of a lot of our youth groups to have a genuine exposure to a really good service learning opportunity as opposed to a superficial one. And what we've offered in the past couple of years have been intensive justice training programs that have allowed kids to both get exposed to some of the theories of social justice change and also shadow people within grassroots justice organizations. So they have kind of a mini internship along with this justice training. But our attempt to expand from 2 to 3 trainings this year, with a third training happening in Seattle, in addition to Boston and New Orleans, the Seattle one didn't enroll enough kids to run. And so we're beginning to kind of figure out that a justice training experience may not be what all the kids are really interested in, and service learning may be more to their liking. So we're trying to adapt some of our domestic programs to really be specific to high school youth for this coming year. One of the things that we're adding into our roster this year is a program to Brooklyn to help with the continuing need for recovery after Hurricane Sandy, and to do so in a way that looks with a justice lens at the different impact that climate change is having on marginalized communities and how it's impacting people who are not marginalized. So that's one opportunity for youth groups, because it's in Brooklyn. The other opportunity is actually one of the border programs that we're setting up for youth so that they're not actually crossing into Mexico. They're staying on the Arizona side, but they're getting a deep exposure to the immigration justice issue, and they're helping by actually going into the desert with some of the groups that leave caches of water for migrants who are lost in the desert. So the youth programming is the second area I wanted to tell you about. The third area is specifically for young adults, and we define this as the UUA does, of being ages 18 through 34. But what we've done is create some summer-long internship opportunities, and we're especially targeting college age, although they're available to young people who are older than college age. We had 9 of them in the summer of 2013. We had 15 this summer, and our goal is to have 20 next summer. And we support them with a stipend, which is important for you to know, because as you may know, most college internships are these days unstipended. It's basically just free labor that they're getting on the premise that the student is beefing up their resume and learning something they want to learn. But sort of in the name of fairness, we're stipending our internships. And we feel really good about them. We had almost 40 applicants for the 15 slots that we had this year. So the word is spreading quickly on that one, and the evaluations of the experience are universally positive. We match them with colleagues who are available as chaplains during the course of their internship. And we also have a study guide, kind of reflection guide for them to be able to process the experience as they're in it. The fourth area we're just starting to build out this year, and it is akin to the summer internships, but it's actually designed for people retirement age who have well-developed skills that would be of use to a partner organization that couldn't afford to hire somebody. So we're beginning to explore setting up kind of a matrix of connection between justice organizations that we're partnered with that can define a project that they need help with. For instance, we need somebody to come work with us and translate the content of our website from Creole to English. That's a specific request from the partner in Haiti. Another request that we had last year was from a partner in Kenya who wanted somebody with videography skills to be able to create an outreach video for their work. So specific projects like that that we can then post the job description and the housing opportunities and so forth, and match a skilled volunteer with that need. So that's the other area that we're trying to build out for people to have opportunities to deepen their understanding of this justice work and at the same time really be of service. In that last category is one of the first things I wanted to mention that's specific to ministers. We now have on our website 3 opportunities that are available specifically to ministers on sabbatical, linked to Unitarian or UU communities overseas. So these are things that have moved over from Eric Cherry's office, the international office of the UUA, to the College of Social Justice. And again, we have some funding available to support our colleagues in going on these trips. So we're hoping to build that out a little bit more fully. I'm going to give you a shared screen for a minute here. Can you see the screen, the CSJ screen? Is that showing up now? Okay, hang on just a second.
Yeah, it's up there.
Okay. So going back to the homepage, if you look under journeys, you'll see an option here for religious leaders, and that's all of you. So under religious leaders, you're going to see the October Border Witness program, which is the trip that Peter Morales and I are leading next month, designed specifically for clergy. This is absolutely full. We had room for 25 and we filled it up, which is amazing and wonderful. Specific to people who are interested in helping us as a whole faith think through our response to the border crisis and how we as a faith community can really. The second thing that you'll see under religious leaders are sabbatical journeys. And this is, for ministers, the same idea I was talking about a minute ago, skilled volunteer opportunities. So we have 3 of them right now in the Philippines, in Mexico, and in India. We have an application process. We have more information for people who want it. But in each of these, if you click on the link, you'll find out more detail about that particular placement, what's entailed, what the partner community has said they could most benefit from in having a colleague come to visit, a little bit about resources that we think you should study in order to prepare for that kind of a placement. And we will continue to kind of build those things out, but just to give people sort of a basis for beginning. And we're hoping to add a similar set of programs that would be like that, but for seminarians, for ministers who are still in formation. What we have right now for seminarians are group experiences, like the service learning experiences, but they're specifically geared towards seminarians. And a really great development this year that I'm very excited about. Last year, we took a group to the border, a seminary group, pretty much on our own. They signed up from 3 different seminaries, but they were not getting credit for it, for instance, in their seminary. And the seminaries weren't really promoting it. They were friendly toward us doing it, but they weren't really doing much to promote it. And now in this coming year, what we've got is 2 programs specifically for seminary students, and we are doing them in direct collaboration with our 2 UU seminaries. So the border trip is going in collaboration with Star King, and we have a Hurricane Sandy recovery program for students from Meadville. And in both cases, the experiential learning component is embedded into an academic course, and students are going to be receiving credit for it as well. So we're really excited about that collaboration, and we hope to continue to build that out. So I think I'm going to take a breath and just pause here. Actually, let me say one other thing, and then I'll pause. On our website, the other thing I just wanted to show you is our goal is to embed our programs, or to build our programs out not only around spiritual practice and the idea that a faith-based organization that is offering justice programs should reflect that faith base explicitly. So part of what we do is encourage people to have a contemplative practice. We build contemplative practice into the study guide, and we build it into the experience of the program itself. And then we are also, for each of the programs that we have this study guide has these units of study for people to prepare for the trip, 6 units before they go, and then 2 units after they come home to help them process it. And in each of them, we have what we call this line here, destination reflection. So if you were going to Haiti, at this point in the study guide, you would follow this track. If you were going to India, at this point in the study guide, you would follow this track. So it is an online resource that we're kind of constantly reiterating and building out so that it continues to be a really rich learning of which the experiential part is just one part. And a great deal of it is also preparation and thinking about who we are as North Americans if we're going into the developing world and so on. All right, so now I'm going to take that screen off and go back to your faces and see if you have questions that I can answer at this point.
This is wonderful, Kathleen. I wish this existed when I was a youth and young adult, and we'll see if I can take advantage of it as a clergy. I'm working on a doctorate in ministry, looking at youth, at the religious development and spiritual faith formation for youth and young adults.
Huh?
So I'm particularly interested in those programs that you're doing, in your theological reflection component. And are you doing any pre or post research in terms of the impact before and after on the youth and young adults?
Well, actually, that's a really great question. What we have done, because we're struggling, as I think every sort of nonprofit or social change, or for that matter, religious institution struggles with, how do we know we're accomplishing what we're setting out to do, you know? And the mission for the College of Social Justice is easy to summarize, but hard to actualize. It's to inspire and sustain faith-based justice work on issues of local, national, and global importance. That's it. It's lofty. And the idea is that through experiential learning and justice programs, we can serve that goal. So we thought about this a lot last year, and we ended up hiring a consulting team that works at the Heller School of Management of Brandeis University. It's a team that the UUA actually hired a few years ago to create an impact assessment tool for the UUA, and they felt like it had been a really useful experience. So we interviewed this team and decided that they had the perspective that we needed. So we've been actually working with them for the last 6 months to create an impact evaluation tool that we will continue to use going forward for years after the end of a program, not just for youth and young adults, but for all of the participants in our program. It's following what's called a logic model that helps you really define the outcomes very tightly that you're hoping for, to look at the strategies that you think serve those outcomes, and then to look at ways that you can measure whether those strategies are in fact achieving the outcomes. We're having a final focus group to finish honing that tool in the very early part of November. So after that, I'll know more about what that assessment tool looks like. But I expect to have something that will let us touch base with people before they participate in a program and measure some things about how they understand their faith commitment in relation to justice, how involved they are right now in something that they define as social justice, what it looks like, you know, a certain number of questions that we can then follow up on maybe 3 months after a program, 6 months, maybe 5 years after a program, and find out what might be different. The challenge that I don't know that we're ever going to completely meet, that I think is true in our congregations and in most social change organizations, is how would you have a, what do you call it? It's not a focus group, it's a group that doesn't go through the programs, a test group.
A control group.
Control group, that's the word I'm looking for. You know, it's really hard to know how you would have a control group. I mean, you could choose a random number of UUs who promise you they will never go through one of your programs, and interview them too, I guess. I don't know. I mean, but it really is a challenge, and we don't know how to meet that one. But we do think we're getting a handle on at least how to gather very, very helpful anecdotal information along with some questions like the ones I just described, that over a long arc of time will help us know if we're fulfilling our mission or not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You said you're in your third year. What do you think the biggest learning you've had has been since you started?
One of the core ones is that the programs that we have designed tend to work best when it's a congregational grouping that goes together. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily have to be one congregation. We've had regional groupings go too. We've had pairs of congregations go together. But when the college was first started and the vision was first created, which was before I was hired, they were all what was called open enrollment. So it was just like, you know, we have trips going to Haiti on these different dates, and people from all over the country would sign up to go together. And it was very difficult to have any way either to help them prepare ahead of time or to help them navigate the impact of the program after they got home. And as we were building out the study guide, which was really over the course of the second year of our existence, we realized that it was a much more useful approach to encourage groups of people to come together, even if they weren't the entire group. So for instance, the group that we're taking to the Holding India Partners in January is comprised almost exclusively of members of 2 congregations. And that is allowing them to do these learning circles in their congregations, including with people who aren't going on the trip, but who really want to understand more about the Holding India Partners, and then gain from their cohort's experience when they come back to the congregation. So that's one learning that we've had, and it has made us sort of strategically target our outreach toward congregations and congregational groupings, as opposed to that sort of scattershot approach. We're still the opportunity open for people to come on programs when they're not part of a congregational group, but that's one of the things we've learned. A second thing is that people seem very responsive to very targeted programs. So for instance, this program this coming month of clergy going to the border area, we set out to craft a program that would specifically aim at helping a group of UU leaders strategize together on how we collectively can step up our game on the immigration justice issue. And the program we offered came out of that strategic thinking. So that's another learning, I think, as opposed to just saying we have these great justice partners, we want people to meet them and learn more about their work, to instead kind of start with, what do we most want the outcome to be out of this experience? What would we hope people would do if they came on this trip with us? And try to answer that question and craft the program accordingly. So that's another thing that we've learned. Do others of you have questions that you want to lift up at this point?
I have a question, and that is about how a program sort of gets initiated, or how an idea gets started, because I've got thoughts about a trip, so to speak. When I was at Andover Newton Theological School, and they were doing journeys such as you're doing to Mexico and India, I was trying to put together one to Native American reservations, and I think that we called it at Andover Newton border crossings. But I think that there is so much going on right now around Native American issues with the passage of the Declaration of Indigenous Human Rights, and how long it took our country to sign on to that. I'd really like to see something like that developed, and I could clearly see that being regionally done, with congregations close to specific reservation to travel there, because the issues on reservations are amazing, and what the Native Americans have had to deal with are really significant issues.
So let me answer this question in 2 ways. One is sharing the site for the newest program that we're adding, which is Stories from Lemme Nation. This is a group of indigenous people. The Lemme Nation is in the Puget Sound area of Washington State. So this is our first foray into that territory, but it's specifically based on what you just said, that given that our denomination was beginning to really elevate the visibility of the justice issues, partly based on the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery, but also based on the fact that underlying all of the College of Social Justice programs is an element of economic justice we want people to think about that really has to do with colonialism and neo-colonialism. And it really didn't feel possible to do that unless we were looking squarely at the most basic colonialism of our own nation's founding, right here in home territory, you know. So we have added that. But more broadly, to answer your question, and actually I will say that this program is an exception to the rule that I'm just about to tell you. So we'll come back to that in a second. It's not that we're without contradictions. But when we first started, we had an awful lot of people coming toward us saying, oh, you should take a trip here, or you should go there, or you should, you know. And we had to very quickly focus our attention on how do we decide where we're going, and how do we decide what the purpose is of any program, given that really the sky's the limit in terms of the potential for where you could decide to take people. So we have a few very core criteria. One is that we only work with institutions that are indigenous to where we're going. So we don't work with an American NGO in Haiti. We work with a Haitian organization in Haiti, if that makes sense. So we derive our partners partly based on the idea that we want the partners to be comprised of and designed for the marginalized communities that they're serving. So not an American NGO, but an indigenous organization. The second thing is that with only a few exceptions, of which the Lemme Nation program is an exception, the justice organizations, these indigenous organizations that we bring people to, are already partner institutions of either the UUSC or the UUA, which are our parent organization. So rather than having the college launch off in a completely new direction and find completely new partners, for the most part, trying to follow the pathways already established by either the UUA or the UUSC. A third criteria is that the partner organization have clear capacity to hold Americans without damaging their programmatic work. That's been particularly critical as we've decided with the Holdeen staff where to go in India, because some of the Holdeen India partner organizations are doing extremely radical work that could be imperiled really in a life-threatening way if the presence of a group of North Americans caused more government attention on it, for instance. So that's an issue of care. And the final one is, do we see a way in which this program can lead to specific actions that people can take when they come back home? So those are that's kind of the framework of how we decide. And of course, it's also capacity. The College of Social Justice has 4 full-time staff people, including me. So given all the programs I've described, you can understand that we're trying to be very careful about taking on new directions or new partners at this point. Although, as I said, in this coming year, we're building out 2 new directions. One is Hurricane Sandy and one is the Lemme Nation. That's a very good question. Thank you for that. Philip, anything you want to ask about?
Gosh, not yet. I'm just listening. Thanks.
All right.
Kaki, tell me about the study guide. The study guide seems to be the thread connecting all the different programs.
Yeah, the thread connecting the programs. I'll put the screen share back up for the sake of talking about that a little bit. So the study guide is a tool that we developed through a collaboration with the FOS, what's called the FOS Collaboratory at Meadville Lombard, run by Mark Hicks. And there were 5 of us who spent most of a year really working on this, not trying to create it from scratch. Are you guys seeing the screen now?
No.
No? Hold on, I thought I went to screen share. Hold on.
There it is.
Yeah.
So on our regular website, right up at the top among the primary tabs is the study guide here. And it's available to anybody. You don't have to be going on a College of Social Justice program in order to utilize it. And in fact, it has been used in a couple of other programs. People have been nice enough to ask our permission, but it's up there for anyone to use, But it seems to have turned out to be a useful tool for a number of other kinds of programs. So we're happy about that. Some of the material in it, in any case, was produced by other people. So it's a kind of collaborative effort from the get-go. What we set out to do was to create something that would help people, before they ever went on a journey, think very carefully and learn a lot, not only about that justice partner and not only about that destination in its context, but also about themselves and the lenses that they are bringing with them when they travel. So you'll see in the very beginning, although we talk about spiritual practice and social justice and why we think that's so important, what we think spiritual practices have in common, and why we think it's so important to the work we're trying to do. And then we also describe learning circles before we get into the body of the study guide. And this is because our ideal, and it hasn't happened across the board, but really our ideal is that any group that is coming with the College of Social Justice will try to magnify the impact of their travel with us by sharing their advanced learning as well as their conclusions or the new questions they have when they come home with a wider group of people in their community than just those who are traveling. So each one of the units has a study circle discussion guide as part of it to help them do that. So it's a pretty robust tool, really. We begin with who are you, and we ask people to think very reflectively about their where they are in the matrix of privilege and power according to race and class and gender and a bunch of other things. We give them meditations at the beginning of every one of these units, and we also have sort of a middle piece that we call Take a Break in the middle that's often music or a short video that we invite people to watch to just break up the pace of the learning that they're doing. In each of them, each destination has its own materials, and so people are reading and thinking about these broad themes in the context of where they're actually going. So unit 1 is who are you, unit 2 is who are we together, and it looks at us as a denomination and also thinks a little bit about covenant, what it means to have a covenant and to be a covenantal people, what it means to have a covenant for journeys, because you're often bringing together people into a very intensive learning environment who don't necessarily know each other very well. So it's a good idea to be thinking about what we promise each other in terms of how we'll be together during that experience. Unit on Economic Justice, as I said earlier, has a particular focus on colonialism and neocolonialism, but economic justice is really the common thread in every place we go as well. The vast disparities of wealth and power are incredibly vividly evident in every one of the destinations. So we want people to be preparing for that before they go. The unit on crossing boundaries has something to do with physical boundaries, but it has more to do with understanding what it means to step into a culture that is not your own. And what I really hope is that people take this unit very seriously in terms of where they live normally. So that, for instance, if you have an experience of going with us to Haiti, when you come back to your home in Kansas City or New Orleans or New York or wherever you live, that you'll think differently about the racial and economic boundaries in your own home community and what you or your community, your congregation might do to cross some of those boundaries. So that's what this unit is designed to help people think about. Bearing witness, we found to be a really important unit to include because one of the hard things about traveling to the developing world is, particularly for people who've never been in the developing world before, is you're confronted with the contradiction of your own economic privilege, even if you've never thought of yourself as a privileged person. And you're confronted with disastrous poverty sometimes. So you're, in effect, confronted with problems you can't resolve. And it was really important for us to include some elements in the study guide that help people come to terms with the concept of bearing witness as at least one response to overwhelmingly large structural justice issues and problems. Partly that's because we have had the direct experience of people trying to leap through the discomfort that happens in experiencing these contradictions into very inappropriate solutions. An example would be you're all on homestays in an intensive experience in Haiti, and because you're so uncomfortable with the poverty that you're witnessing, you conclude that what you're going to do is create a scholarship fund for the 2 little girls in the family that hosted you, without ever thinking about the disruption that causes in the community itself once you leave. So we want people to think very, very carefully about the ways in which an action like that is really going to make you feel better, and can cause a lot of unintended ramifications if you're not very, very careful. Unit 6 is beginning to move into what do we do about all this? How do we step forward into the struggle against injustice? How can we catch hold of a piece of it in our own home communities? And then these last 2 units are designed for people to use as they return home, to think through where they've been, how they tell the stories of where they've been, how they might put the experience to work in their own home community, and so on. And same with Unit 8, in which we also try to expose people to some of the existing resources within both the UUA or the UUSC in the primary issues that people will be studying when they travel with us. That may be more information than you want, but that's a way to tell you about what the study guide is for.
That's really good, thanks. It sounds like people could use that study guide even if they have no intention of ever going on a trip.
I think they could. I'm not exactly sure. If I were just in a parish setting and I wanted to take it and use it somewhere, I think what I would suggest is that you read it through. You know, basically, work the study guide yourself and then think about whether or not you could use it. One of the things that we're hoping is that there will be at least parts of it that our colleagues who are traveling with us to the border next month will use and find helpful in helping their congregations think about the current immigration crisis and what they as a faith community might feel called toward in stepping up. And we're also going to try to build it out in a few ways. For instance, for the border trip, one of the resources we asked people to use is a movie called Harvest of Empire. One of the things that we'll do is create a short study guide for that film so that our colleagues have a tool they can take home with them and do like a 2-session adult RE course or a 3-session adult RE course and have it all ready for them. They don't have to think about it. They can just take the study guide that we'll create and utilize that. So that'll be embedded then in this study guide as well as an additional educational tool.
Just to let you know, Kathleen, I'm planned because of the project that I'm doing for my DMIN and my congregation with my youth and young adults. I'm going to be going through your whole program there and probably lifting some of it and applying it, because I'm creating a program for youth and young adults right now where they work on a social justice project while reflecting upon their UU values and their beliefs and their worldview and theodicy. And so it's somewhat similar, but they're doing it at home in their own church. But so we're right now just trying to choose a social justice project.
So Kate, one of the things to just consider or to think about as that evolves for you and develops is that one of the things that we hope the college can become over time is kind of a repository of some of the collective wisdom that at this point just kind of floats out there. It doesn't really get collected in any useful way. And if you end up with a good tool that your young people have found helpful, we'd like to archive it, and put it up as just like embedded as an additional tool on the website so that a colleague across the country from you who's interested in helping their young people think it through can go to this website and see, oh, Kate Walker has developed this cool tool for our youth or for our young adults to use when they're engaged in this. Let's see how it works for us. It's a way to spread the goodies around a little bit. So if you come up with something that you think could be reiterated by other people and you wouldn't mind having us help spread the word about that, we'd like to continue to archive resources like that.
That is my goal, actually, is to create something that is not minister dependent, so that it is transportable. Because my thesis, my thesis is basically if we pay attention to our youth and young adults beyond coming of age and invite them to think about their values, their beliefs, their worldview, and through the lens of social justice, that they'll be stronger, able to articulate themselves as Unitarian Universalists and more likely to be committed to our faith as well. So, and I'm going to be probably talk about your program in my actual thesis paper, which I'll be writing this winter, but I'm definitely going to talk about your program as another way that the UUA is reaching out to youth and young adults.
Good.
Yeah.
And if you should look at the roster of possible destinations, and if any of them look like they would serve the need that you're fishing for your justice program, contact us and let us know, and we can work with congregations. I mean, the beauty of going forward in partnership is that we can work with congregations on dates and even tailoring itineraries. So we can't add additional destinations based on what a congregation wants, but given the roster of destinations we have, we can work with a congregation to meet their needs. So
my youth group has already been looking at your website on their own, even before I got my teeth sunk into them. But so they are looking at something for next summer, which would be after my project is done.
Right.
But it would be, in my view, it's a nice extension of the work that I've been doing with them, that they can, and so that they're kind of primed.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm really hopeful and that they'll continue this impulse that they have. They just need to raise some money.
Yeah. Actually, let me just say one word about that. One of the premises on which the college was founded was that a chunk of the money that was raised to start it is always set aside for scholarshiping. It's all need-based now. When the college was first conceptualized, they set it up so that ministers and DREs and seminarians as well as youth and young adults, we're all privileged by percentages like 25% off or even 50% off. And we very quickly decided that was not a model congruent with our values, that it really needed to be not role-based, but need-based. So for all of our programs, we have a chunk of a percentage of the cost of the total program is set aside to scholarship people based on need. And that percentage is higher for programs that target seminarians and young people, recognizing that they have fewer resources generally. So keep that in mind if when you look at one of the programs, your first reaction is sticker shock, because we do try really hard to give people who are in need scholarship assistance.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be talking with them about this next Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday. This is going to be on my plate for them.
Great.
Yeah.
Kaki, who's participating in the trip so far? What's the age range? What would you say their level of political sophistication is? How much is the stuff in the study guide brand new material to them, or things that they already have been working with?
You know, it's kind of all over the map. I mean, in terms of the demographics, that depends on what the program is, because a number of our programs are targeting specific age groups. We've also had a fairly significant number of young adults go on just general service learning programs. So, for instance, the mainline congregation in Philadelphia took a group just this past spring to Haiti, and of the 20 or so of them, it was a big group, 18 or 20 went, and I think about 80% of them were young adults. It was a very high ratio of young adults that went on that particular trip. I'm not sure why. And the West Hartford congregation is exploring going with us in the spring to Chicago with the food chain workers. And their group seems to be largely comprised of young adults as well. So it really just depends. In terms of political awareness or existing engagement in social justice, our experience so far has been that it's been really the entire gamut, from people who are beginning with just this feeling of, I want to help, through to people who've been justice activists for many, many years and have a pretty sophisticated understanding. So what we're trying to do, I think we have a bias in the study guide, because it probably reflects the bias of those of us who are involved in creating it, who are across the board activists. I think we have a bias toward people, or that it has a flavor that's a bias toward those who are already pretty aware, and that it's an important thing for us to try to correct, so that we have ideally multiple entry points, from people who are really at 0 or number 1 on a scale of 1 to through to those who are all the way at 10, but who want better tools for their activism or something. That's just sort of a challenge for our future.
No, messing with me.
Other people have any other questions? Allison, do you have any questions?
No, I think this all sounds fantastic, and I've learned a lot myself this hour. We do just have about 5 minutes left. So if there aren't any questions, if you have any kind of final words.
Well, the only thing I would say is that we are in this kind of constant struggle to find out where our constituents, which are our colleagues as well as the members of our congregations, where their energy is for the kinds of resources we're trying to offer. It has, we're a brand new startup, right? So some of what we have imagined has been an immediate hit, so to speak, and we've had full enrollment and it's running swimmingly. And we've had to cancel some programs because they didn't enroll. So we're learning as we go, but it would be a much better thing for us and for the toll it takes on our stamina to know as much as possible about where the energy is us before we build out programs. So anytime any of you want to say, hey, I'm hearing in my congregation a real interest in X or whatever, it's just food for thought, but it could be very helpful, I think, to us. And anything that you can think of as ministers that you think would be of particular use to you, whether you're retired or whether you're still actively in a congregation, in your own engagement with justice, we're always interested in hearing it. We may or may not be able to build an existing program, but it's something we want to know.
I was interested also just real quick in the retired high-skilled projects. What do you got that I could do in next summer?
Interested in that. So I haven't said very much about it because we're not all the way there yet. We're kind of tiptoeing into this territory for a couple of reasons. One is that it is one of the areas that we don't think we can fund. So it's going to be something that if we can craft opportunities for people, we're not going to be able to subsidize it. It'll need to be people who are able to garner some support to do it from their congregation, or who have the means themselves to spend a month or 2 months on a site working without being paid. And that, for better or for worse, is true for a number of our retirees. But it's one of the reasons why I'm a little hesitant about talking about it too much, because ideally we would be able to support people in doing it. And I just don't think we're going to have the bandwidth to do that. The other reason is because, by and large, the organizations that have expressed the most interest in it are overseas, and they're in developing countries. And we want to be very, very careful to be sure that we have enough of a support system in place in terms of housing and safety and sort of safety protocols and stuff like that before we launch forward with this. Where we are right now, though, is there are a couple of partner organizations to the UUSC that are Haitian organizations that have really expressed a very clear need for short-term project work that a volunteer potentially could do. So we're in the process of having them articulate as clearly as possible the project idea, the length of time, whether there's a time urgency to it, whether they can supply a translator if necessary, those kinds of things. And then our idea is that we would put it up on our website and advertise that these options are now up there. They'll have their own sort of drop-down place where people can look. It'll be like an electronic bulletin board, where just like the page I showed you for the ministers for sabbatical opportunities, exactly like that, it'll give detail about the partner organization, about the project they want to have done, the skill set that we think is needed for that project, the housing that they can offer, all those little details. Here are some things you could read to understand more about the Philippines or more about Haiti, and then an application. So the service that we would offer to the partner organization would be basically to screen people so that we could be as sure as possible, not only that the volunteer does have the needed skills, but that they're stable, that they understand the living situation they'd be stepping into, that they have the mental and physical stamina to do the project that is being described, and so forth. So that's the idea that we have, is really kind of making of the college as sort of a matrix of connection for the partner organizations and the individuals who would like to go do this, or the couples, if they're coming as a couple to do it. But we're trying to be really careful about making it a positive experience all the way around, and making sure that the driving force for it is actually coming from the partner organization. And it has to do with cultural sensitivity and the overall justice lens that we're bringing to bear. The reason I'm saying that is because it's really easy for Americans to say, oh, I'm going to go help, and they have this great idea of this wonderful project that's going to help the people in Haiti. And usually it doesn't work that way, So we really want the indigenous organization, the host organization, to define the project and express the need themselves, and then say, we're going to do our best to find you someone who can do that.
Well, I worked for a while with like Jericho Road type projects here in the United States, and the kind of the project management of those short-term things, even in this situation where people share culture more than in an overseas situation, it's been very difficult. And getting that project management to work right is a big challenge. So, I think that's I hear where you're coming from on that with the caution. You could also connect you could also fundraise off of those where people could pledge money to help fund a person going to a particular project.
Right.
Crowdfunding to help pay for it, but.
No, that's true too. I mean, one of the pieces of reality that I operate in, though, is that because the college is a program developed by the UUA and the UUSC, it's also been funded by those two agencies. So I don't go out and do my own fundraising. Those UUSC fund it through the extra fundraising they've done to support it. So wanted to do what you're suggesting, I would need to either get permission from both of them to do this whole thing of fundraising, or they would need to agree that's a direction we want to build things out. We're going to go back to these same major donors and see if they'll give us. So I'm I don't have complete control over that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're down in the weeds on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I spread the word. Maybe next time we'll have a few more people want to hear about it. It's a busy time of year for colleagues, and I get that. So maybe we'll try it again.
Yep.
Thank you. Those of you who are
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.